5-Year Mission, the podcast, episode 50.
This episode of 5-Year Mission, the podcast, is brought to you by Fansets, your home for all things pop culture pin related. Head over to fansets.com and see all that they have to offer. And also stay tuned at the end of the episode for a very special offer from us here at 5-Year Mission.
By now you figured out that this is the 5-Year Mission podcast.
Welcome to 5-Year Mission, the podcast, the only podcast hosted by a band called, you guessed it, 5-Year Mission. It's the best we could do and live with it. I'm one of your hosts, Andy Fark. Tonight, I am joined by Noah Butler in my top left window.
Hello, everybody.
He's in my top left window. We're synchronized.
That guy talking in my bottom window, that's Mr. Chris Spurgeon.
I do not talk in your bottom window. Thank you very much.
Well, on this episode, we are revisiting an old episode. We're not going to talk about Star Trek at all tonight, actually. Kind of weird. I mean, unless one of us somehow miraculously connects one of these to Star Trek, feel
Unlikely.
free. Yeah.
We're not just about Star Trek. We're a band. We play music.
Right.
So we have to talk about music sometimes.
Every once in a while.
Every so often. Even music that's not about us. We just like.
We play music because we love music and we love listening to it. And we're going to be talking about music that we love to listen to. Specifically, Andy, what are we going to be talking about?
Well, last time around, we did a NU2U episode, and that was just kind of stuff that we kind of discovered over the pandemic. We're calling this episode NU2U2, except none of us have picked the band U2.
For obvious reasons.
Which is tragic, considering it doesn't even go along with the episode title now, and I quit. But these are bands that we've either recently discovered or recently rediscovered or have just been completely obsessed with as of late. So to start us off, we're going to talk about a band that Noah has recently discovered, and I was amazed to find out that he had just discovered these guys. Go ahead, Noah.
Yeah, I amazed myself that I had recently discovered these guys because the band is called Mission of Burma. I had been, I have some more time on my hands nowadays and more able to listen to music. And so I would kind of go on and play an artist that I really liked and play their station, their related artist thing. So I was playing a lot of Bob Mould's station. Stuff came up that was interesting. It's a lot of stuff I knew. And so it finally landed on this song called That's When I Reach for My Revolver. And when it came on, I was just like, I wasn't really looking at who it was. And I was like, this is a cool song. Who is this, And I looked down and saw it was Mission of Burma. And I'm like, that sounds familiar. I feel like I should know those guys, but I did not. I did not know those guys. And then I didn't think much of it. I thought, that's a good song. I should look them up sometime. And then a couple of days later, they played Academy Fight Song. And I looked back down and go, oh, that's a good song. Oh, that's Mission of Burma too. I got to go check these guys out. What's my problem? So I saw the album that it was being played from. And so I went and found that and started playing it. And I just assumed it was an album, like a proper album. I assumed it was like their first album or something. But when I went back and kind of investigated it, it was actually I think a couple of EPs maybe, and then some bonus material. What I was listening to was a Matador Records release from 2008 that kind of combined a couple EPs and had some bonus tracks. But by the time I found that out, I was listening to that album start to finish multiple times. And I just thought it was an album. I was like, this is a great album. This is a great first album. And it kind of is like a first album because it's their original, first songs that they wrote. But it wasn't their first proper release album. I think this one was called
Signal Calls and Marches.
Thank you. Signals, Calls, and Marches. I actually went out and ordered the vinyl and got the vinyl Yeah, I liked it so much. This is a band that was formed in Boston in 1979, and were kind of had their heyday in the early to mid 80s. They kind of considered post-punk category.
Very early
Yeah.
iteration of that.
Those two songs that I just mentioned are definitely sort of like they're catchy. Most accessible. I think most people can listen to those and like them. A lot of their other tracks, you're going to have to like really kind of like what they do, because the rest of it is a little more kind of gets dissonant, and they're a lot more just kind of experimental and noisy, and might not be for everybody, the rest of the album. But I love it, just start to finish. Really got into it. I was amazed looking at how many people, like how many bands that I love cite them as an influence.
Oh yeah, I wrote all those down. Yeah,
I was like looking at this list, and like Superchunk was on them. Of course, I talk about them, but I think it says like Pearl Jam, Foo Fighters, Superchunk, Jawbox, Replacements, Throwing Muses, Yo La Tango, Pixies, Husker Du, Guided by Voices, Fugazi. I went to my buddy Phil, who is the person I probably had the most musical conversations with in my lifetime. And I said, why didn't we talk about these guys? Like, why? Like, it's like your job to introduce me to these. This is like right up your alley. This is something you should have introduced me for. Like, why did you not? And he's like, I don't know. He's like, I sang, That's How I Escaped My Certain Fate. Yeah. He's like, oh, I played that. I covered that at that party you came to that one time when my band was playing. I played that song. Like, so he's like, I don't know how it never came up.
Well, I mean, most likely you probably didn't know it was a cover at the time anyway. Yeah. So,
and that's off that song I just mentioned is off their actually first full release album called Verses. I wanted to include another song off another album besides the first two. So it was just very refreshing to find these guys and get into them and find something that has been around for a long, long time, but is completely and totally new to me.
Yeah, I mean, considering that they like went for as little time as they did in like their initial run, and then like one of the guys got tinnitus real bad, and the band just decided to disband, and then they finally did some like reunion shows. I think it was like 2002.
Yeah, they kind of had a second wind. They
did like 3 or 4 albums then.
Yeah, like after 2002. Yeah, they did. They kind of had a coming back and were moderately successful with those too. So I think it was missing one member.
Well, it was the guy with tinnitus. He just decided not to come back, because I guess towards the end of that final tour and their original run, he like switched out his little like foam earplugs to like actual like shotgun range headphones.
I read that, and they would have those live on stage. I think Rittenhouse did that one time.
Mike did that several times. That was kind of his thing for a little bit, as I recall.
It's a look, that's for sure.
That was for Little Voice. He used to wear those. Yeah,
one thing that I had no clue about this band, like how far reaching their influence was. I guess like REM on their Green tour would actually cover a Academy Fight song live, and then they also wound up recording it for some like fan club thing that they did. Like there was just like a limited edition, like 7-inch or like a mini disc or something like that, and so they have a recorded version of Academy.
I've been meaning to track that down, and because I had heard that, and I've been meaning to track that down and listen to that. Because I love me some REM as well, and I accidentally stumbled upon the Moby cover of That's When I Reach for My Revolver, and I was like, I'd completely forgotten that Moby even existed.
Yeah, well, the weird thing to me about Moby, I mean, we're digressing here for a second. The weird thing to me about Moby, he's known for like his dance music and stuff like that, but he grew up like a punk rock and hardcore kid. So like he knows, he's well educated in like this whole scene.
Clearly to choose that song to cover. So it was interesting.
But I mean, you also have to think with like REM. I mean, the guitarist, I can never remember his name, actually played on one of the Replacements albums. So it's weird how like all these bands like intertwine.
Oh, and they were all kind of around at the same time, so they were more like contemporaries and. I think that's always interesting when bands are influenced by by their contemporaries as opposed to, something that came 10, 15 years earlier.
Yeah, it's almost always nice to see, because it's kind of like a nice little like, hey, I really love what you're doing, so much so that it's currently influencing me.
Yeah, I had never heard of them either, and I haven't really gotten a chance to listen to them a lot. I listened to the few songs that you included, but it sounds like something that I would enjoy to continue to listen to. I dug the song, so yeah, I'm actually looking forward to checking them out some more. I find it interesting that they were so influential, and I'd never heard of them. A lot of those bands that you rattled off, I like and am familiar with, at least. So it's weird how these bands can be so obscure just because they never really reached, attained
high heights,
fame. Yeah, and yet they have such influence over bands that did gain that kind of fame. So it's
and I forgot, I did actually have a connection to Mission of Burma that I didn't know. I had gotten into an album or a collection of recordings by a band called the Volcano Sons, and that drummer for the Volcano Sons was the drummer for Mission of Burma, and I didn't realize that till I started doing the research on them, and I was like, oh, okay, so I had one connection to the band. I just had never heard of Mission of Burma.
Well, let's move on from Mission of Burma, and Chris, let's move on to your first pick that you have found a little about.
Yeah, I have found precious little about this band. There's a good reason for that, because they are practically brand spanking new. They're band spanking new. They're a band out of Nashville called Lemon Drop, and they released their first EP in, I think it was April of 2022. So it was just this year. And it's like a 4-song EP. And they have other songs that they released prior to that. And I found them on Amazon Music. Much like Noah, there's the algorithm. But what I do a lot of times is I'll go to an artist that I like, and I'll look at the related artists and just kind of, click on them and see if I like that. And if I kind of like it, then I'll click on their related artists and kind of fall into that rabbit hole. But this is one of the ones that I found, and there wasn't a whole lot to listen to, but what I found to listen to, I really, really dug. And it's you can tell that they are young artists. There's a lot of angst going out, there are songs about lost love and things like that. But it's really good songwriting. I mean, so Shut Up and Move On is the name of the EP, which I love that title. Anyway, and they have kind of the lead track. Actually, it's not the lead track, but it's the most popular one. It's called Strawberry Wine. And the song is about continually falling for someone who isn't quite falling for you. But the lyric, it kicks off with this lyric: you call me strawberry wine so you can drink me dry and walk away with a buzz. And I love that visual, because it's it's like we can all relate. You really like somebody and they show you attention and you give them what they're there for, and then they just walk away and don't want to have, and then they don't come back until they need that attention again. And it's just so relatable, and that's what I really like about their songs. Not only are they super catchy, but they are really relatable, and I like that about them.
Yeah, I've definitely had some relationships like that Strawberry Wine song.
Yeah, I mean, it's totally something that you can say, oh yeah, I remember that. I went online and I tried to do some research, and I couldn't find a whole lot. And again, it's because they're pretty new. But I did find out that they're from Nashville. Joni Lemons is the name of the lead singer, and I assume that's where Lemon Drop comes from.
Makes sense.
And she's the lead, and then there's David Moran, Brandon Carey, and Max Mosier are her backup. So And as far as I could tell, I looked at pictures and they all look pretty young. Of course, you can't tell, but based upon what they look like and the subject matter, I kind of assumed that they are self-described as if Joyce Manor, Maroon 5, the Black Keys, and Julian Baker decided to form a band together for some reason. So it's like, I thought that was it. It seems like they took their four influences, one influence from each member of the band, and just said, okay, this is what we put all this together, and that's who we are.
Yeah.
And I just think it's funny that that's how they describe themselves. But the sound sounds like something you've heard before, but it also sounds fresh and new. So it's really good stuff.
Yeah, my initial and I haven't gotten a chance to listen to it many times, but I've listened to the songs a couple of times, and my first initial thing was like that the name of the band is almost like this perfect description for how they sound. Like it's a great name.
Yeah.
Like the sound matches the name,
like sweet with a little bite.
I was gonna say like sugary, but a little bit sour.
Yeah.
She does have a very kind of soulfulness to her voice, to her vocals. It's very glossy and shiny music and extremely catchy.
Yeah, I do love she winds up like doubling her vocals in a lot of the songs. Like I can tell it's not like the rest of the band backing her up, because you could tell it's still her voice, but it adds such a great layer to the songs.
I'll say that it is probably a little too glossy and poppy for like my regular tastes. It would take some getting used to. There's a little like, I love catchy poppy things, but there was something just a little too modern pop with it that I think it would take some getting used to for me, or at least some more repeat listens before I could maybe accept it. It's not in my usual wheelhouse of music.
There's actually a song on it was one that I had selected and I took it off. It's called That's All She Wrote. And that has a little more of an edge to it. Mm-hmm. And I actually swapped that out for one called Green. And that was actually one that was released after their EP. So they've had 3 songs they've released after the EP: Green, Sour Girl, and Saturday Night. And Green is the reason why I wanted to put that in instead, is because it's the other ones are kind of upbeat and poppy. And this one is much more kind of slower, laid back, and contemplative. The one of the lyrics, I've listened to it and read the lyrics, and I'm not entirely sure what it's about, but from what I gather, like the first lyrics are, well, if the sky is falling, guess I'll crap guess I'll crack open wine and watch. So it's kind of, and it keeps going on like that. It's kind, I mean, it feels kind of like, the world's falling all around me, and I'm just gonna kind of make the best of it. It's called Green because she refers to herself as green, like being new, and she's gonna say she's green, and it's like things are changing, and I'm gonna be something different. I don't know if that's what it's about, but that's what kind of the feeling I got for it. So it's it's a different, it's not that poppy catchy kind of thing. It's a little bit, it deserves a couple more listens to kind of get into it, which is what I did. I kept, because there's only like 10 songs. They only have like 10 songs or something.
Yeah.
And so it's easy to listen to multiple times. And when I was trying to figure out which ones I wanted to do, I just kept coming back to that one. But then I was like, no, I just want to keep it upbeat. But then I changed my mind. So what's funny is when I was on Amazon Music, they have these other albums that are attributed to them, and I don't know if they actually did it or not, but it's like video game music. It's
interesting.
Like I don't know if it's the same person or not, but
like stuff from sound, like video game soundtracks, or is just
yeah.
Like, you never know, because I mean there was that one band that we played with for a second there, Scissors from Chicago.
Yeah.
They were on that like MLB The Show video game. And you know, a lot of times, like if you have the right connections, you can get like a single on one of those games. So that may be the case.
Yeah, but it wasn't like it wasn't like music with lyrics. It was like,
Oh,
you know, like an 8-bit interpretation of a song.
oh,
Yeah.
most likely
Like,
something
you know,
different
the
then.
old, yeah, it's actually pretty
One thing I
good.
notice about Amazon Music is they don't do a great job of separating artists who happen to have the same name. So a
Yeah,
lot of times you
sometimes,
think you've chosen the right artist, and or you'll choose the artist, and they'll have multiple albums by different artists of the same name all mixed together, and so it can be confusing.
Well, I get that on Spotify every now and then. I'll get like, you know, hey, it's the release radar and everything, and I'm like, oh, cool, let's see what's going on. And I see something new from Devo, and I'm like, what? Devo put out a new single, and it turns out to be some like Latin pop star that goes under the name Devo, same spelling, all capitals and everything. And I was like, how did they not know of the internationally famous artist that started in the 70s and is still going, called exactly this?
It is possible. It looks like Lemon Drop, their first songs are in 2020.
Yeah,
The ones that are clearly them. And then this other stuff is from like 2017 or 2018. And since, you know, it's Joni Lemon, she may have been doing this stuff as Lemon Drop back, you know, before she was doing other things. So I don't really know, but if you find Lemon Drop and it sounds like a video game from, you know, the 80s, maybe it's the same thing, maybe it's not, I don't know, but it's worth checking out one way or the other. And what's cool is they're from Nashville, so the potential to be able to see them regionally is
Hey, and you know
increased.
what? Where I live now, you know what I figured out, Chris? Nashville is closer, is the same drive as Chicago was when I lived in Indy. So like Nashville is like
really?
my new
I guess so.
Chicago, because it's like 3.5 hours from here. Whereas now Chicago's like 5 hours.
I'll drive extra to go to Nashville.
You got folks there, you got people there.
Let's drive into Andy's first pick.
Ooh, good segue.
You like that?
Kinda, I guess. Let's get into some garage rock craziness with Montreal, Canada's own Les Sexterinos.
Such a great name.
Man,
such a great name.
I discovered these guys a few months ago, and they really only have like 2 full lengths and like an EP and like a bunch of 7 inches and stuff, but a lot of singles. But then they did a compilation full of their singles, so I guess that kind of counts as one of their other full lengths. But yeah, they formed in '99. The guy that some people may know that's in the band plays drums, named Mark Sultan. He currently tours under the name King Khan Barbecue Show, which Noah, you would probably highly enjoy. But right before this band, he had a little bit of success with a band called you may need to beep this, Noah, when you edit, the Space. Yeah. But he decided he wanted like a little something less in a band, so he decided to hop back on drums, and they added in like the two main guys that do vocals back and forth, and then they added in I believe her name's Annie on Farfisa, like the keys. And they just started killing it all over Canada, and then they started releasing other music, and then they released one album called Live in Bed, which I think is a fantastic name for an album.
It is.
And
that's good. Yeah.
And then the 14 Frenzied Shakers album, they called it quits in like 2002, just because King Kong Barbecue Show started getting really big. They're actually playing in Memphis next week, and I'm very disappointed that I'm going to be missing them, because they're playing with Shannon and the Clams at Goner Fest. Oh man, I'm so pissed I'm not going to that.
Yeah.
but yeah, it's this is, let's put it this way. If I did not have 5-year mission going and keeping me as busy as I am, I would start a band that sounds exactly like this, because it's just, it has that like super frenzied like 1960s garage rock sound, like all the like the Sonics and things like that, and like early like Louie type stuff. And it's just, it's phenomenal. It just makes me think of like being at like a house party where everybody's wearing pastels and spilling Schlitz everywhere. It's like that kind of band.
That was that was exactly when I was listening to it. I was just like, this is number one, it was just awesome. And number two, just stepping right out of that like early 60s just party music, you know. And
it's like, hey everybody, I finally discovered distortion.
Yeah. Are you familiar with there was an album, a compilation album out called that I wound up with somehow called Wavy Gravy, and it's a bunch of those old like kind of gems, 60s gems, you know, weird stuff intermixed with like trailers for like B movies, and that's just, it sounded like they just hopped right out of something like that, you know. Like they could have easily just been on that Wavy Gravy album.
It sounds like the kind of band where you're like, you just happen upon some club in some gritty neighborhood, and it's just this dark, dank club, and you go in there, and there's just this band just tearing the stage apart. You know what I mean?
Of course, every single girl in the place is on the dance floor, sweating their asses off dancing.
Yeah, I mean, it's fun, and all the songs are just real short and just really tight, and just it's the kind of music you can just to have fun, listen to, and then all of a sudden it's over. You know what I mean?
And what I think is really great about it is that, you know, even though it sounds so much like some of that 60s garage rock stuff, I've listened to a lot of that old 60s stuff, and no matter how crazy it gets, like the old 60s stuff still had a level of reservedness to it. Like they could only take it so far with just energy and speed, and they just, you know, they were always a little bit restrained even when they were kind of trying to be crazy. And with these guys, it's just like they are able to take it up that next notch to where you just like, you know, really feel it. And just like, that's the energy that I wish a lot of those bands from the 60s could have taken it to back then. You know?
Exactly. Yeah. Their title track, Everybody's Sexerino, it's like just one of those classic like 60s anthems. Where it's just like, they just repeat the same verse over and over again, but it's still like, it gets you shouting along, like, and then we go 1, 2, 2. They're just counting. That's it. And it's still so catchy, and you sing along just counting to 3 until they say everybody's Sexerino, and then they just rip. It's like a whole call and response thing, and it's just like, that's the kind of stuff that gets me going.
It was great. It was really refreshing to have that, because I didn't know what to expect when you were sending stuff over, and when that came on, I was just like, I mean, I knew it had to be something fun with the name all by itself, you know.
Right.
But I did not expect it to just be so energetic and great.
You never feel like they're working too hard. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It just feels effortless. And, you know, there's some that punk sound that it just sounds like they're doing what they think they should be doing, you know, as, you know, playing that kind of music. And this doesn't sound like that. It just sounds like they're having a good time and just making good music.
Well, I mean, like that third song that I put on the list, the way that you work, like that has such a groove to it. It's just, it's one of those songs where I could always picture again, like that whole weird house party in the 60s, and so like the singer's always just like, between every single song, it's just like picking a girl out of the crowd and being like, this one's for you. And it's, and the like, and they're just and the girls in the crowd are just losing their minds for every single song, and it's just like they have so much weird, dirty swagger to them, and
Yeah.
I'm such a sucker for it.
And yeah, and so, but you said it was basically like late 90s, early 2000s is when they.
Yeah, for the first album came out in 99, and then they put out their last release at like 2002, and that was it. They were done. No reunions or anything like that, just because like Mark Sultan, like I said, went on to form what did he go on to form? He formed another band called right after that called the Almighty Defenders, which is kind of along these lines, except a little more like the band The Cynics, if you've ever heard them, Noah. But yeah, you'd probably like the Almighty Defenders too. But like I said, he tours the world with King Kong Barbecue Show. Like he just got back from a European tour with all that, and now they're on like a little US leg, and like I said, they're playing Goner Fest next week, which is like the big garage rock mecca. For like Goner Records is in Memphis. Hey, and another Tennessee reference there.
That's right. That's right.
Well, Noah, let's move on to the most Noah pick you could have submitted. like I said before we started recording, I immediately saw the name and I was like, I know I've heard these guys before. Hit play, and I was like, yeah, this is definitely a Noah pick.
Yeah, this was another one that came on just listening to a station with related artists and their algorithm. And I think the first song, Railway, it came on, and I was immediately caught just by the atmosphere of it, like the production. It's got this very big, ethereal, almost shoegazy. Everything's very affected, lots of pedals, and it's kind of got this bigger sound and very atmospheric. And so I kind of was immediately attracted to that sound. I was like, oh, this is different, and I like this. And the song played, and I was like, oh, that's cool. Who is this? And I no idea, never heard of them. Kitchens of Distinction, had never even heard the name. But didn't think anything of it. Again, a couple of days later, another song came on, and I don't think it was one that I included. But it came on, and again, I looked and I was like, oh, it's Kitchen Distinction again. I like this sound. So then I just started listening to that album, because most of the songs were off the same album. I just started listening to the album, and I loved the feel and the sound of the whole album. It was even hard to pick songs for it, because
they have like what, 5 albums?
Yeah, they had 4 or 5 before they broke up, and then I think they reformed like in 2017 or something and put out one 13. Album or something. 13, okay.
Yeah, four albums between 89 and 94, and then when they reunited, they released Folly in 2013.
So the songs I picked, all the 3 songs I picked are all off the album Strange Free World, which is their second album. And I listened a little bit to the other albums, but there was something about this album that just the feel of it, the sound, the production on it, that I really liked. But it was hard to pick the songs, because honestly, like, I'm listening to it as a whole album. I'm not like, it's not like Mission to Burma. There were some ones that stood out as just like these great hooky single songs, anthems. And these, like, there wasn't a lot that I could pick out and go, this is very accessible, and most people would like this song. I couldn't do that. It was just like the whole feel of the whole album is just like, I just listened. I literally wouldn't put on a song. I would just put on the album and listen to the album straight through, because I just liked the sound and the feel of it. And then later I started to, as I started to pay attention to words, and because it's got this very glossy kind of sound to it, and I would catch a few lines here and there, and I was like, oh, is this guy got some cheesy trite lyrics? Is this going to be a little disappointing once I actually start paying attention to what he has to say? But then I started looking up the lyrics, because I was starting to sing along, and I was like, what is he saying there? So I'd look up the lyrics, and I'd be like, that's kind of dark, actually. He's actually a pretty good songwriter and has pretty good lyrics, and the songs are kind of dark, actually.
Well, they're from South London. You have to be a little bit dark.
Yeah. From Tooting, I can't say tooting without laughing. But yeah, formed in 1986, and definitely this album that came out in 1991, so it's technically a 90s album. Still to me sounds very 80s. It's got I mean, it might be bordering into the shoegazy thing of the early 90s, but it's still, I feel like it's got a lot of 80s production, a lot of 80s sound to it, kind of Cure and Psychedelic Furs if they were really lighter sounding,
Yeah.
as far as its vocals go. And
I got a real REM vibe from them, not surprisingly coming from you.
yeah, well, it's got a lot of jangly guitars, and but I know it's certainly not for everybody. I could see how the guy's voice might eventually be annoying to people, just kind of the way he sings. And it's certainly, like I said, a very glossy, shiny, shimmery sound to it. But one of the things I like is that a lot of times in those very overproduced, effecty kind of albums, a lot of times the drums get buried in all that. And a lot of times even the drummer's you don't really get to hear their chops all that well. But in this one, the drummer's got a lot of energy, and like you can still hear the drums pretty well, and he's really like playing with energy, and even though there's like this wall of synth and guitars around, swirling around it all, he's still doing like some pretty nice drum work on there, which I appreciate.
Yeah, I'm still amazed that these guys are a 3-piece. Like with as full as they sound, they're a 3-piece. I have no clue how they do it.
I didn't realize that. That
Yeah,
is pretty impressive, because it does sound a lot fuller than what you would get.
I was expecting like a whole like flock of seagulls type of setup, where there's like 5 dudes and just like one of them plays like a single electronic drum.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of studio layering for that particular album. I meant to look them up live. I meant to go to see some live stuff, see how they were pulling that off live. But I think there's a lot of guitar pedals that are making synth sounds as well as guitar sounds. But so Kitchens of Distinction.
It's such a weird name too. I mean, we go from Lace Sexorinos to Kitchens of Distinction.
I think it said they saw it in like I don't know, like in a Sears magazine or something that was advertising kitchens, basically, but it said Kitchens of Distinction.
Well, I mean, Mission of Burma and Kitchens of Distinction are very, very Noah names.
That's true.
I mean, when Noah sent his picks, I'm like, yep, that sounds about right.
Well, what's hilarious is that they apparently they used to do like secret gigs under their alter ego name, Toilets of Destruction.
I did not read it. I did not hear that. That's hilarious.
I like it. I like that.
Oh my god, that is so good. Just alone, that is a great band name.
Toilets of Destruction.
Toilets of Destruction. I mean, just imagine the album artwork you could come up with a name like that.
Sledgehammer going toward a toilet, or a toilet with a sledgehammer. A toilet with arms and a chainsaw.
Like a toilet that looks like your dad used it on a Sunday morning after a barbecue.
He just made that real nasty.
Yeah, well, we can't all smell like rosies, but speaking of rosies, Chris, let's move on to your next pick.
Okay. So Noah and I went to see the Beths it was last month, wasn't it? And we may have mentioned the Beths a couple times, maybe on the podcast, maybe in real life.
That was one of the choices on the last episode of this.
Yes, maybe I'm obsessed.
Yes,
slightly.
Yeah.
So Noah and I saw them at the Hi-Fi in August, and it was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And had an opening band called Rosie Tucker, named after their front person, Rosie Tucker.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember thinking, wow, this is really good. You know, you never. It's the opening band is always
Hit and
always
miss.
crapshoot. You know,
Yeah.
you never know, never know. It's like a box of chocolates, and that's right.
Easy Forest.
And Rosie Tucker was really impressive. So they are from LA, and Rosie studied music at USC and was raised in a very religious atmosphere and became disillusioned with that.
Not surprising.
And you can hear some of that in the music. They actually started out as a solo act just under Rosie Tucker, and the first album that they put out is actually an acoustic album, and it's really good. Like, it's really, really well produced. It's called Low Light, and they put it out in 2015. And I didn't choose any songs from that album just because I wanted to do the full band songs, but it's definitely worth checking out. It's really cool. Then they went on to produce another album in 2019, and I love this title. It's Never Not Never Not Never Not.
Yeah.
And I couldn't find that anywhere. I couldn't find the album, so I'm not. I haven't listened to that one, but I intend to track it down at some point. And in 2021, they signed with Epitaph Records, and I don't know,
which is weird. It seems so odd.
I know, and I don't know where the rest of the band came in. So I think Jess is on bass, and the guy playing drums is Wolfie. And I don't remember the other person's name playing guitar, although they're really good.
Yeah.
And there's actually there's a song that they do with Rosie, and it's this really cool harmonies. It's just such a cool song. And that song is actually on the 2021 album released by Epitaph called Sucker Supreme. And that is the album that I chose the songs from. And it is listed on Pitchfork's list of 29 great records you may have missed in spring 2021. And I can't agree more, because I didn't even know who they were. And then when we heard the band, I just wondered how that slipped by. And I had knowing that Rosie Tucker was going to be opening for the Beths, I started listening to a little bit, and I thought, wow, this is pretty good. But you know, when you you start listening to a band and they catch your ear, but then you see them live and it changes everything. And that's kind of what it was like. I liked the music already, but when I saw them live, it just changed. It just made me love them all that much more. So they're just a really cool sound. I don't know, Noah, how would you describe their sound? It kind of goes, it's not just a singular sound, you know, because
I would say it's a little more of a laid back folk punk, because it kind of has like the angst, but it still kind of has the melancholiness of, like, say, like an early like Dashboard Confessional, but a little more subdued.
Yeah. And they have some of the, none of the songs that I chose, but on the album, there's some definitely more experimental stuff and kind of noise rock almost, you know, where there's, you know, fuzz going on and just these ambient sounds. And it's, if I'm being frank, I do think that kind of breaks up the album, because it doesn't have a cohesive feel to it, that album. Not that it's not good, it just you just have to be ready for it, you know. You have to be ready for going from one kind of this pop folky feel to something that's completely different, but they mesh well too, I think.
I was there with you when I saw them live, and I was blown away. I was very, very impressed, because you're right, the opening acts can be hit or miss. And I definitely get the sense, you know, you got the sense that Rosie had definitely been a solo artist before, because there was even a couple of times during the set where they
Played themselves.
played by themselves. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And listening to kind of the previous album and then Sucker Supreme, I think there was just this sort of magic thing that happened where you have a solo person, and then sometimes they can just get studio people or just random people to
Mhm.
back them up.
Hmm.
But like there was some kind of magic that happened when all of them came together.
Yeah.
I think something happened. Sometimes it elevates the songwriting, it elevates the song itself. And I think that's what happened there. I think there was a lot of elevation where they all came together. And watching them, like each one of them up there on the stage, they all had this very distinct look and sort of a distinct personality.
Yeah.
And they just had this kind of swagger, and Rosie's stage presence was just awesome.
Yeah.
And
they all had those shirts with their names embroidered
Yeah.
Nice.
on the left
white
breast.
t-shirts. Yeah.
Yeah, it was
Nice.
great. That's a really good point, Noah, that about them coming together. And the early acoustic stuff, I feel like Sucker Supreme is the evolution album where they take these two different sounds or multiple different sounds and kind of mash them together. And then as I feel like as they develop into the next album, things will really, you'll have that gel that you see, and it'll be even more, it'll have a even more cohesive sound than it does now. So
yeah, I'm really looking forward to that next album.
Yeah.
And I still regret not getting, like, I was this close to
I do too.
to buying the album when I was there, and I didn't do it. And I really wish I would have, but I'm very excited about maybe what that next evolution is going to look like.
Yeah, me too. And just a couple notes on the songs. I chose Habanero was one that I chose, and the key lyric in this is wouldn't we be perfect together if we wanted exactly the same thing? Again, a very angsty lyric, but really, I mean, it's really a really good lyric. I found this interview where Rosie said the song is about flirting and wishing your life was working out differently, and eating a pepper that is so hot that you can't stop laughing. And the guy who made the tacos brings a plate of tomatoes to your table to try and help cool you down, and amphibians, but just a little bit. I thought that was an insane, really funny description of a song.
Yeah.
It kind of makes me think that when they wrote it, they had this idea and it kind of went off the rails a little bit, but totally worked,
Well, their lyrics are great. Like the lyrics
I agree.
are just a work of art. They're great lyrics, and oftentimes complicated and wordy, but not trite. Even when they're making a simple point, they're still, the lyrics aren't trite. It's good songwriting.
Yeah, it's super easy to be trite when you're trying to be earnest, and they are really good about avoiding that and just finding that pocket where the lyrics speak to you in plain language, but don't sound goofy, And the other one of the other ones was Ambrosia, and it again, kind of this theme in all the ones I chose, it kind of has this angst in it. It explores a tug of war between reveling in an idyllic relationship and feeling but like battling with these this anxiety and these anxiety fueled thoughts. And it's funny because I can relate. I don't experience these things anymore because I'm this old married guy, but I remember that feeling and feeling these things, and it's so relatable. You can just think about, oh yeah, I remember what that feels like, and that really gives you a connection to the music, that the way it's written and performed is it's easy to like.
One thing I wanted to say about I know seeing them live, you had listened to some of that music ahead of time.
Yeah.
So when you saw them live, you'd kind of already heard them, and I had not. So I'm hearing them live, and then went back and started listening to the album afterwards. And to their credit for the live show, like, I mean, they're true to form as far as the songs go, from the album to live. But the album definitely had a softer feel and performance to it.
Yep.
Whereas live, I mean, you felt it in your chest.
It has an urgency.
Yeah, and
live.
the drums, of course, were louder live than they're kind of toned down in the recording, and just when they'd kick on a distortion pedal or something live, like you felt it rock, which the album has those moments, but you don't quite feel it the same way. But I think that's just a credit to being really good performers live.
And the song that I mentioned earlier, where it was just a duet, that one it's real pretty on the album, and I like it. But live, it just, seeing them do that, because it's kind of a complicated arrangement, even though it's just two guitars and some vocals, but it is a complicated arrangement, and it's just really, it's impressive to watch.
It was impressive. Yeah, it was. All right, Andy.
Take us out, Andy. I can't think of a good segue here. So just play with your next one.
I'll play. Oh, I see what you did there. But first, before I do that, we got to go back to high school. My high school days, slightly later than your guys' high school days, because you guys are older than me. Not by much. But back when I was in high school and just out of high school, one of my favorite bands, and matter of fact, was the biggest influence for my band in high school, as a band called FYP, stood for 5-Year Plan. They were on Recess Records, but they also released some stuff on Epitaph. Oh, look at that little full circle there.
How about that?
But yeah, they were just insanely fast, insanely self-described obnoxious, and they really were. Like, every single song was like maybe like a minute and a half long, something like that, and every single beat was just like as fast as could be. So fast forward up until maybe like 3 months ago, I was looking for podcasts to listen to, and one of my favorite shows, here's another little thing before I haven't even named the band we're about to talk about.
The tension is killing me.
I'm a huge fan of Mystery Science Theater 3000. And then they did the reboot on Netflix with the host, Jonah Ray Rodriguez, who just used to just go by Jonah Ray. But he had a podcast called Jonah Ray Dio. Yeah, I've said that because you got to stress that because of the name thing. It's dumb. But his opening theme song, I had no clue who it was at first. And then I started like listening to the podcast and finally figured it out. And they put it in the show notes finally that it was a band called Toys That Kill. And the theme song the podcast theme song was A Little Bit Stranger, which is one of the songs that I included on the list. And I was like, why does this lead singer sound so familiar? And it turned out that it was because two of the dudes from FYP went on after FYP broke up in the early 2000s to form Toys That Kill. And I was like, perfect.
How I know.
And like, it's so funny because like the way he used to sing in FYP was just very just screaming and obnoxious and just and he got a little more nasally, but he can actually hit notes in Toys That Kill. I just became absolutely obsessed with these guys. Like, I devoured all their albums. Like, as soon as I found out who it was, even like posted on Facebook, I was like, who is responsible for not telling me about Toys That Kill, knowing I've been such a huge FYP fan since high school? And everyone was like, oh, I figured you would have heard of them by now. It's like, you would be dead wrong. But yeah, they formed in 2000 in San Pedro. They put out 5 full-length, 6 EPs, a bunch of 7-inches and singles. And let's see, I lost my tab for Spotify. So yeah, A Little Bit Stranger, became immediately obsessed with that song, and that's off of the album The Citizen Abortion.
That's their first album, correct?
Yeah, that is their first one.
Yeah.
Their most recent album was
Sentimental Ward, maybe.
which is such a great album name.
It is.
But yeah, and then the song I've Been Stabbed is just so good, so catchy. And then it's basically just about being stabbed, literally. I love how you guys had all these songs. You were like, yeah, it's got these like really heartfelt lyrics, and then here it's literally a song about literally getting stabbed. Like you guys were reading off lyrics, and I was like, wow, that's very poetic. So I looked up all the lyrics for A Little Bit Stranger, and literally it's out here, it's a little bit stranger. What's a trip without a little danger? At 6 a.m. it gets a lot colder. That's what you got. That's why you got a head and I got a shoulder. Boom. Boom.
There's a little bit of poetry in there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But yeah,
I mean, it rhymes.
They are still together, and most recently, Noah, you would be interested in this. They recently joined forces with Mike Watt of the Minutemen.
Really?
Yeah, and they're going out, and they're not doing original songs. No, they're doing all songs by Iggy and the Stooges. So Toys That Kill with legendary Mike Watt of the Minutemen doing a bunch of Stooges songs.
Wow. So who's Mike Watt singing? Is he?
I have no clue. I haven't looked up any video of this yet, but yeah, they've actually toured together, like Mike Watt's solo stuff. The Toys That Kill would go out on like little jaunts with him up Washington and Oregon and stuff. But yeah, that's Toys That Kill.
Well, when you sent those over, and I listened to I've Been Stabbed first.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like, I think it was the first thing I listened to out of everything you sent over. And I was, of course, like, yep, that's an Andy. This is definitely an Andy pick, but I liked it. And I let it play. Like, I think I went to that song, but then it continued to play. I went to the next song, so play it. And each song that came on was great. Like, and it's because it's melodic. It's catchy, but it's also like it's simple. Like, there's not a lot of the guitar doesn't even sound fully distorted. It's like kind of clear, just breaking up, kind of clear. I mean, it is
just on the verge of disaster.
Yeah, it's not like a big wall of fuzz or anything like that.
Yeah, it's just like an overdrive.
Yeah, just like an overdrive, and it's simple and super, super catchy and just high energy, and it was a bunch of fun. So I wound up listening to all of, is it Family 42 is the name of that album?
Like the yellow album with the raccoon on the cover.
The raccoon, biting someone's arm. It was that album was a ton of fun, and I really enjoyed it. And then I went back and listened to I've Been a
Little Bit Stranger.
Little Bit Stranger, which was off their first album, and then I liked that song, and I kind of listened to more of that first album. But that first album to me sounded more like we were saying earlier, where I almost felt like they were trying too hard to sound. I don't know, it just sounded a little immature, or a little like trying too hard to sound in a sort of typical
angsty punk rock teens
way from that period of time, you know. Whereas for some reason this Family 42 sounded more like, I don't know, more like they had sort of evolved a little bit and were writing a slightly different style of song. And so I enjoyed that one, that album more than that first one.
Yeah. They definitely evolved over time. But again, like I said, they obviously started hanging out with Mike Watt, who's basically one of punk rock's godfathers.
Right.
And so I'm sure they probably wound up learning a lot from him.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I mean that's a guy that evolved. I mean, he was ahead of his time when the Minutemen first came out. But I mean, he's definitely, stuck to his guns and kind of still an innovator. So yeah, I think probably working side by side with him had like a big influence on them.
I could see that.
They had this EP from 2013. It looks like it's Toys That Kill and Future Virgins.
Yeah,
and they have the album cover is like this little girl meme. It's this picture of this. I think that's from from an old ad for jelly or something, and she's looking at this slice of bread.
The old like Welch's ad.
Yeah, and she's got her hands underneath her chin and she's smiling and looking all sideways. Yeah. But it's like it looks like a children's artist rendering of it.
Yeah.
It's really funny. It's called Split. The album's called Split.
It's an actual split EP between the band Toys That Kill and the band Future Virgins. So I don't think there was ever an actual title for it.
Yeah, it's funny. I just like the cover. as I do like the cover, the Family 42 cover.
Yes.
Got the raccoon.
That was a thing like with FYP, they're the band that these guys stemmed from. All of their album art, if you look it up, it's just like taken from like old coloring books or like pamphlets from like the 50s, but they would like modify them like just enough. Like one of the albums, like there's like a kid swinging on a swing, but like his leg is flying off. Just they're definitely well known for that.
Yeah, I enjoy the music as well. They're just these tight punk songs, and it I mean, I think none of them are over 2 minutes long.
No,
you can absorb the album in a sitting easily.
Well, I mean, the three songs that I chose are respectively a minute 23, a minute 5, and a minute 9.
Yeah, actually, I'm looking at it now, and it looks like there's one song that's almost 3.5 minutes, but everything else, there's two songs that are over 3 minutes, but everything else is either just over 2 minutes or under. So I mean, it's distinctly punk rock.
All right, are we wrapped up here?
We are wrapped up just like some toys that kill on Christmas. Tune in next time for I don't know what.
Oh, you know what we forgot to mention?
What did we forget to mention?
This is episode 50. This is the 50th episode.
Oh, snap.
Of 5 Year Mission, the podcast.
It only
baby.
It only took us like 2.5 years to get here.
That makes it even more momentous.
Almost 3 years, I think, actually.
Yeah, 50.
Matter of fact, let me look up and see when our first episode was posted and see how long it took us to get to episode 50. It's going to be something very dumb. First episode aired on August 30th, 2019.
Okay. 3 years.
3 years to get to 50 episodes. That's dumb.
And how long will it take us to get to year 5?
Oh my God. Let's hope less than a year.
Let's hope.
Do you like 5 Year Mission? And do you like getting exclusive content? You should head over to Patreon right now and visit 5 Year Mission, because we've got all the exclusive content that you're not getting on any other social media. There's videos, pictures, sometimes we post news there before we post it anywhere else, behind the scenes of us working on albums and podcasts, and sometimes just pictures of us goofing off that we don't put anywhere else, only on Patreon. And there are many options to choose from. You can be a lieutenant commander, you can be a captain, you could even be an admiral. Each of those comes with their own special perks. One of the perks of being an admiral is that you get to be a producer on this podcast. Currently, our producers are Carol Jones, Jen Tift, Helen Lake, Steve and Frankie Polopoli, Roxy and Becky, Debbie Rinke, Madison Rachel Jones, and Jim Morehouse. So what are you waiting for? Go to Patreon/5 Year Mission right now. That's the number 5 Year Mission. And sign up. It's that easy.
You all know what time it is? It is fan sets time. I didn't even have to check my watch to tell you it's Fansets time. Anyway, you all know Fansets, Harry Potter, DC Comics, Irwin Allen, and of course, Star Trek. And newest in the Women of Trek series is available now, the glittery, oh so fabulous Rafi. Glittery, it's Rafi's portrait. You know the Women of Trek series, it's all been fantastic. And also from Star Trek Picard, you got the Confederation Delta, you know, the evil kind of mirror federation. It's the Confederation. They're conning you. Anyway, you want to order those, head on over to fansets.com, fill up your card, enter the discount code TrekGeeks, all one word, all caps, TrekGeeks. You can get 10% off your entire order, and remember, if you spend $30 or more, you get free shipping. Fansets. Our pins have character, and we thank Fansets for sponsoring each and every episode of 5 Year Mission, the podcast.
I got a text from Mike earlier, and he was very claustrophobic at a volleyball game.
Ugh.
He was packed in the bleachers and had to take a few moments to step outside because he was feeling claustrophobic. I know how he feels. Last time I was in the bleachers in a gymnasium, I got COVID.
Oh, good God.
I feel his pain.
Maybe that's why I haven't gotten COVID yet, because I haven't sat on any bleachers.
Yeah. Don't go to any bleachers. Avoid the bleachers.
COVID lives in the bleachers, didn't you? Haven't you read that?
Something about the grain. Like if you sit against the grain, you're good for COVID. If you rub your butt with the grain, auto COVID.
That was my mistake.
Thank you for listening to 5 Year Mission, the podcast. If anyone is interested in listening to more of our music, check us out on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, or anywhere that you can listen to music. Just search for 5 Year Mission and we will be the first thing that pops up. If you would like to contact us, you can email us at 5yearmissionband@gmail.com. You can also find us at 5yearmission.net and make sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
5 Year Mission, the podcast, is a production of Coconut Media Works. Executive producers Bill Smith and Dan Davidson. For more great Star Trek discussion, discover the other shows of the Trek Geeks Podcast Network at trekgeeks.com, or find us in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app.
Coconut.